Joey Matteoni. It's Iowa's newest basketball commit. You might be asking yourself, who's that guy? We explain today, Locked On Hawkeye.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast, your daily podcast talking all things Iowa Hawkeyes. I've been covering the Hawkeyes for over 20 years on the radio here in the state of Iowa, including currently you can hear me on the Iowa Sports Radio Network each weekday from noon to 2 with stations in Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, the Quad City, Sioux City, and our flagship 106.3 KXNO each weekday from noon to 2. Talking the world of sports with Ken Miller. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. A busy program here today on your daily episode of Locked On Hawkeyes. Playoffs, yeah, we're looking college football playoffs, and can Iowa actually make a run? We'll talk with Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. His thoughts on the new look college football playoff. Are we going to 16 teams? And more importantly for us here, what does that mean for Iowa football going forward in this new, what looks to be 16-team era after this season in college football? Is it a good thing for the Hawkeyes? We'll talk about that and more coming up with Scott Dochterman. But we begin today's program with some basketball talk as Iowa has picked up a commitment and one seemingly out of nowhere. The name Joey Matteoni comes in from the Kansas City area, Overland Park suburb down there, Blue Valley Northwest. A 6'9", 215-pound forward. And this was one that was not on many people's radar. This one definitely came as a surprise. You know, there's been so much talk over the last now month or so inside Iowa basketball is there's some kind of secret commitment. There's a guy that nobody knows. Is this it? I guess so. Yeah, we go back to Williamson a week ago, the Florida international transfer, and the buzz that was there on that one. Let's start right here. Kid redshirt last year, Joey Matteoni at Drake. A very good Drake team, a Drake team that went 31-4. Still, he redshirted as a freshman. This has to be looked at as a developmental. A guy that you're bringing in to build, to grow, to be a guy that you're not worrying about for the 2025-2026 season. You're looking down the road in something that you believe you can build Matteoni into. That's what this is. If your hope, your belief as a Hawkeye fan is that this guy's going to come in and provide any kind of depth in the front court, I'm sorry, it's just not a reality. Yes, guys can improve. Guys can make big jumps. And there's a reason that Ben McCullum wanted to bring him in. There is a reason that Matteoni is going to be part of the program. But there's also a reason that we had to wait until almost June before they got that commitment. Because I'm sure they struck out at some other guys that they were looking for. That's the reality of the situation. It's not to say that there's no chance for this young man and that he can't develop into a Big Ten player. So I went back and watched a highlight video. And as we laugh about here, yes, take a drink, highlight video, every day, as you know. Highlight videos are just that. They're highlights. You're not going to see a low light video. If you do, it probably wasn't put out by their camp. Probably wasn't put out by their AAU coaches or their high school coaches or mom, dad, Uncle Bill, whoever it is. No, you're not going to have those out there. So you're seeing the best of the best. And this was from a couple of years ago. This is from 2022. So still while he is in high school before he's even a senior in high school. What you saw, start with the frame, 6'9". I think he's a little bit bigger than he was in the video that I saw. On the shot, 3-point shot is okay. It's not beautiful. It's not a one that you're going to bounce your grandkids on your knee and talking about. Matteoni's 3-point shot. They're a little bit of a hitch. Goes a little bit low coming out. But it's fine for a guy that's 6'8", 6'9". You're in good shape there. Good release. Again, a little bit low on it, but gets it off quick. I don't see anything, again, developmental guy that has you hugely concerned on that one. Not an elite level athlete. I wouldn't even say a plus athlete. He's okay. You look at the dunks that happened in the highlight video. It wasn't an explosive guy by any means, but he did appear to be a really smart basketball player. Handles were good too. That was maybe the most surprising positive component of the video watching Matteoni is that the handles were there for a guy that size and a guy that still had a little bit of that baby deer, kind of growing into his body. He was, I thought, pretty smooth with the basketball at that kind of frame. So I think that was some positives there. This is going to be a guy deep down on the bench. We went through the exercise a week ago after Williamson made his commitment, and we went through kind of that minutes breakdown. We talked about the players individually, what we thought they were going to look like, what kind of the rotation, and divvying up those 200 minutes that you get in a college basketball game, and we went that route. Oh, this commitment here is not going to change what we did. It's not going to change in terms of what the expectations, at least that I have right now, are for this basketball team and what the rotation is going to look like. He's deep down the bench. He's another body. He's a big body. And again, develop. Ben McCollum has been an elite level guy at just that, developing guys. And this is another one. In Ben, we trust. It's not fun. It's not exciting, but we got to give the benefit of the doubt to the guy right away. That he's bringing in guys for a reason. It's another guy from Drake, another guy that knows his system. And as we've talked about, this is something that is going to be a leg up for Iowa basketball. The ability to be a step ahead of everybody else. The ability for Iowa to be that team that can hit the ground running right away in early November. And is going to be able to go out there right away and play at a high level. That is an advantage that Iowa has because all these guys have played together. So many of the guys have played together before. They know Ben McCollum's system. And for the newbies, they'll be able to figure it out. But you have so many people that will be able to be teachable. Guys that have gone through it and know exactly what you're looking for. And you start obviously with the point guard, Bennett Sturtz, and you go from there. Iowa hoops in good shape. We continue. Let's get the conversation going on the Hawkeye front over with some football. Scott Dochterman from The Athletic will join us. Scott, a college football writer at The Athletic, also dabbles on the Iowa Hawkeyes. So we'll talk about the college football playoff, the expansion to 16, but I got a question for Doc about what this looks like for the Iowa Hawkeyes. We'll talk about that. Scott Dochterman joins us next on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. My family's been using this now for a while. With Monarch Money, we can find out exactly where our money's going to. Sometimes it's on those kids. Sometimes it's food delivery. Sometimes it's mom and dad maybe being a little bit lazy and, you know what, let's just order out tonight. You can see exactly what your spending's doing right there on the app. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. Also, as a small business owner, this is huge for me. Got multiple accounts. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com. That's going to get you 50% off your first year. monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. monarchmoney.com. Now, Scott Dochterman from The Athletic.
Scott Dochterman writes for The Athletic. Got an interesting piece out today on his forecast for the first 3 weeks as the television partners for these prospective games coming up, or these scheduled games coming up. We'll get to that in just a second. Doc, Trent, and Ken, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. How are you? How was your weekend?
It was a busy weekend. Saw a lot of family. My son's heading to Germany in a couple of weeks, so we had a party for him. So now I just need a vacation for my vacation, or at least 3-day vacation anyway.
Good stuff. Well, I'll get to your piece in a second. Where I want to start with you, Doc, it seems like these SEC meetings taking place in Florida are positive or negative, depending on what side of the argument you're going to be on, are going to move the needle. These seem like they're impactful meetings. Sankey is kind of, I don't know if throwing down the gauntlet, but he's making it very clear who the power brokers are. Not that we didn't need to reminded that it's the SEC and the Big Ten, but it seems like this might be our summer topic, Scott Dochterman, what lies ahead in college athletics.
For sure. And I think once the House settlement goes through, and it could be today, it could be tomorrow, sometime this week, better be anyway, pretty soon. But that it's going to be on to the next stage, which is, what happens with the college football playoff in 2026 and beyond. And I think it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to go to 16. That was something that we kind of been hearing in the fall when the discussion was to 14. And then there were a couple ADs saying, well, if we're going to go to 14, let's just pull the Band-Aid off and go to 16. But along with that has been the push mostly from the Big Ten about adding, 4 automatic bids from the Big Ten and SEC, and then 2 from the Big 12 and ACC, and then kind of down the line. And that's going to be the biggest topic of discussion. And it's going to be how much can the ACC and Big 12 get because they're really not in a position of strength. And then it's going to be how much can the Big 12 or Big 10 and the SEC weather without looking completely overbearing on this. So it's going to be, it's going to be a topic for a long time.
It felt like Sankey just kind of reached a tipping point. And I think it was a question. I think it was Ralph Russo that asked the question of the AP, and he let it fly. He talking about the sanctity of the game and the betterment of the game and those kind of things. And the SEC says, yes, they wanted to survive. My question for you is there any recourse? Is there anything that the Big 12 and the ACC specifically, anything at all that they could do, or they just got to sit in the corner, take their 2 bids and shut up?
Oh, I think there's somewhere in the middle there, Trent. Okay. And by the way, we're blessed to have Ralph.
Yeah, you got Russo. Yeah.
So, once Nicole left. So, but I'll say this, that, I think there's some things that they can do to kind of push this thing along. I mean, when you look at, if they have 16 teams, which is the way it's going, if the Big 10 and Big 12 or Big 10 and SEC could convince them each that we're going to have 4 automatic qualifiers. If I'm the ACC and the Big 12, you kind of have to start working together on this. And I think one thing that they could do, I mean, they're not going to get 8, but if there could be a combination of, can we get 5, and meaning guaranteed 2 for each of the leagues, and then say the next highest ACC or Big 12 team automatically gets in, then you've got a little bit of leverage to you. You can actually, that may mean you have somebody who's 18th, but they still get in versus somebody who's 18th and won't get in if they're behind, straight up at larges. So I think that's probably one thing to do. But the plan to have a first round and buys with 16 teams, I'm not sure if I kind of get that. I think that's a little bit crazy to add another round of tournament play. I just don't know if that's the rational part of this. But the other thing that I think is probably more radical for the ACC and Big 12 is to maybe incorporate some sort of a working relationship, an association, if you will, of regular season football to kind of then be able to get into 4 or 5 teams out of one association. But that's probably down the road a few years.
Yeah, hopefully it's got more teeth than what do we have a few years ago? The Alliance with Kevin.
The Alliance, yes.
There's no contract, but, then you don't have an alliance. Anyways, so what? When will or have the Big Ten already had these meetings? Will we hear from Petiti next? Does he follow? The Big Ten meetings follow anytime soon, Doc?
They had their meetings a week ago in California, but they are different altogether than the other leagues in that they keep themselves very quiet. They don't want to discuss anything. Tony Tony operates almost exclusively behind the scenes, and that's his preference. He just doesn't want to have a lot of, like Sankey, even when they've had their SEC Big Ten divide the world summits, that they've, Sankey's been the one talking most of the time, whereas Petiti's a little more direct, and here's a couple of things, and so it kind of speaks to their personalities a little bit more. And And, when you talk to the people in the Big Ten, they speak very highly of Tony Petitti. They like him. They like the way he operates. And he is personable. He just doesn't, maybe it's all of his years as being a network executive. He just doesn't want to be out front all the time. And hopefully we can. I put my bid in there to say, hey, if he wants to talk, I'm here anytime. Actually, I had that conversation about 2 hours ago. So we'll see if it nets anything. I hope so, because he does need to have his voice out there, because they are a very powerful institution.
Doc, you put out your latest article predicting what we're going to see television-wise for the first 3 weeks of the season, and I'm sure I'm not alone here in the state of Iowa.
First thing I look for, too.
Where did I scroll right away? Week 2, Iowa State. You have that one ticketed, 3 o'clock Central kickoff on Fox. How good do you feel about that prediction?
I feel really good. Now, the time may change a little bit here, but I feel pretty confident that they'll be on Fox, because when you look at the schedule that day, the Big Ten Big Ten is hurting when it comes to home games in that middle week. I wrote a little bit about it. When you've got your best games are at the other team's, TV contracts, Illinois at Duke, and you've got, Iowa at Iowa State and a couple others like that. It's really hard for them. But the Big 12 has a deal with Fox. I think that's probably more than likely going to happen. So, it could be a little later, a little earlier, but I would within like a half an hour of it. But I'm pretty confident that that's where it's going to end up.
But no chance it'll be the big noon kickoff, right?
No, it can't be.
It can't be
Big Ten.
So that has to be at a Big Ten venue. So that's why Penn State. I mean, Florida International, Penn State. But now I understand why you've got that one there. I did not realize.
Yeah,
so that makes some sense. The more I look at week number 2, kind of feels like a number 2, right? In a lot of ways, it's not the best week, Doc. I mean, Michigan, Oklahoma, I'll give you that one. That is the 5-star game of the week. Kansas, Missouri, maybe's got a chance. Iowa State's on any list as far as the best games that week.
Yeah, I think, Kansas, Missouri, obviously Michigan, Oklahoma. But, I mean, I feel reasonably sure that Fox will probably end up with big noon kickoffs in Ames that day.
Oh, so, okay. I got you. Yep.
Yeah, but they just won't have the big noon game, because they're not going to go to Happy Valley for that.
No.
But I think that they'll probably set up shop in Ames for that day, and so it'll be would that make it the third time in the last 4 trips?
I think so.
Cyhawk.
Yeah.
That there'll be some sort of pregame show. I think that's probably going to happen. I mean, I'm not going to say 100%, but I want to say it's in the high 90% for possibility. So I think that's probably going to happen.
Ashton Kutcher, was that the weather delayed game that he was the guest picker? Was that the one? You were in the press box, Doc. I probably.
I was there early, because that was because those games, like the big or the game day was there, until like 11, and then the game didn't kick off till mid afternoon. So I was one of them. I can't remember. I try to avoid it when I can. But so there was like 15,000 people there. I think it was the day of the big rainstorm that prolonged Cyhawk and almost forced Cyhawk to go into November a few months later.
Doc, earlier today, Iowa State put out a release, a couple of new names that had been, a couple of guys that we knew had been committed and were going to be moving on out of the transfer portal, and then a couple of new names that were in there. Iowa now with the potential flexible roster, do you anticipate they're going to do anything? And it might be, look, guys that are down the depth chart, maybe guys that didn't find homes in the portal that were there that are walk-on types, but with this roster limit, potentially 105, but it could be expanded. Anything at all that you anticipate Iowa's going to be doing here this offseason?
Well, they've already picked up a couple of players that I don't know that they would have had the ability to do so. I mean, they would have been really tight. I mean, they're over 105 now, Iowa. And so now they have that chance to pick up. I wouldn't be surprised if they grabbed a couple of extra linemen. You kind of need them just for practice purposes. I mean, they only have 2 walk-on linemen, counting George Nahas, is that how you pronounce it? Come from Iowa State to Iowa, and Cale Winter, who's probably good enough to be a scholarship guy at a lot of schools. So they usually thrive on that. They usually need several. And then when you lose a guy like Joey Van Wetzinga, who transfers out even before spring practice ends, they could use a couple of guys just for the scout lineup. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they're able to go out and do that, take a flyer on somebody while they can. Iowa is kind of penalized for doing everything the right way when it came to this, because there's going to be some grandfathering in, but they don't have to say how they were going to grandfather them in. They don't have to justify it. They just do it. And so I would anticipate, they might pick up a couple more. I don't know if they'll get too heavy, but now they have 3 walk-on defensive linemen, and they should probably have a few more, I think, ultimately.
Doc, is college football playoff moving closer towards February or closer back to January 1st as far as the end date?
I think it's staying pretty much where it is. It's just a matter of how they want to, what they want to do, if they want to add another round, like we were saying, that if they had 4 new playoff spots, and then you're going to have 9 playing 16 and 10 playing 15, and then the winners of that play the next round, and then there's still another bye. It's very complicated. I don't see that coming, but I think what may make sense is to move the playoffs to a position up maybe a week from where it was last year and play it like right after the championship round, so then you could stay away from the NFL. That's been the real hard thing. And so, they're talking about moving it to like a first round to Army Navy weekend. And maybe that's the case, because I kind of think it got too late last year. I think it's going to be too late this year. I think they need to move that more into the second-ish week of January and kind of end it. Because this year got a little cliche, even though you had 2 massive blue bloods in there. But still, I think that's probably the route that they'll go, is they won't go any later.
The 16-team bracket that I think we all feel we're going to get here very, very quickly. Is this a good thing for Iowa? Or is a system where it was 12 or even 4? Was that better for the Iowa Hawkeye football program? The Hawkeyes alone, this new era that we're embarking upon?
Great question, Trent. I would say, I look at it this way, that the best route for Iowa to win a national title, which, is not going to happen, but it had a chance to happen, was the BCS with 2 teams. If they could have gotten in there in 2002 or 2009, 1 game, winner take all, that would have been their best bet. The deeper it goes in the playoff, the less chance they're going to have, because they just don't have the depth and the overall talent to weather that 3 or 4 playoff game run. However, when you're looking at it from Iowa or Iowa State's perspective, for that matter, is get into the tournament and maybe win a game or 2, and then you have one of the most memorable seasons in school history. And I think the 16 team is probably better for them. The guaranteed 4 playoff spots is better for Iowa, because I talked to Brett Bielema about this a few months ago, and he loves it from the idea of, we talk about the old Big Ten West, and you forget that they didn't win in Indianapolis, but that division play allowed teams to feel like they had a chance for meaningful football in November. And you got all the way to, you're a game behind with 2 weeks to go. You're still playing for something. But now when you're an 18-team league and you've got these blue bloods and you're all in the same division, it's hard to think, well, we're 2 games behind. We just have no chance. And then what are you playing for? To go to the Outback Bowl? So I think this is helpful, that if you have something to shoot for, like last year, they would have been 6. They would have played the play-in game against Indiana. And so that's something to shoot for. And if they could get to that position in the future, I think that'd be great for the program. And if you think about it, if they host a game in early December against somebody else in the Big Ten with the right to go to the playoffs, that's going to be one of the more memorable games we'll see in Iowa football history.
That's Scott Dochterman from The Athletic, as we talk a little Iowa football as it pertains to the big picture in college football. Speaking of that, we're talking playoffs. Should we? Last year, there was a lot of talk during the summertime about the playoffs. Should that even cross our lips? We'll talk about it next. Locked On Hawkeyes. Back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Shout out to you, everydayers, with us each and every day. That's right. We got a new podcast for you every single day during the week. Hit us up on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button if you're watching there. If you're listening on the podcast side, 5-star reviews all helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. So the playoffs. We're talking about the 12-teamer this year, likely a 16-team playoff that will begin next season in 2026, and how it fits for Iowa football. So, as I mentioned, last year we talked about the playoffs a lot, and it was a schedule that was set for Iowa to do it. They didn't. They were out of contention early. The loss to Iowa State was absolutely devastating, and they couldn't get off the mat to get to that level. And in a way, there were moments of last season that felt like a lost season because of the returning talent defensively, because of what we had and a guy like Caleb Johnson in the backfield, Luke Lachey at the tight end position. Quarterback wasn't good enough. Wide receivers still weren't there. Year number one of a new offense with Tim Lester. We saw improvements, but still a long ways to go. So is it even a question? Is it even something that should be, or should we just continue to know defense is going to look different this year? Going to be a lot of new faces, specifically at that linebacker spot. On the offensive side of the football, it's still year number one. Maybe we're shooting for too much with Mark Gronowski. I don't believe so. Now, that's not that I'm saying that this is a done deal, that anything short of a playoff appearance should be a disappointment, because I'm not going that direction. However, it's not crazy. It's not crazy for a couple of reasons. First of all, the schedule is incredibly daunting. And if Iowa gets through this thing at 10-2, not only at 10-2 do I believe they are basically a lock for the college football playoff. At 10-2, you likely don't have to worry about playing in the Big Ten championship game. If both of those losses come in the conference, tiebreakers could go that way. Maybe there's a bunch of teams at 7-2 for that second slot, in the Big Ten championship game. But that aside, this schedule, as difficult as it is, that's enough. And 9-3 probably won't. Look, I was not the name brand of an Alabama who was left out at 9-3. But also remember that everything's not in a vacuum. Things are going to look different. Things are going to change. And what we saw a season ago should not be a template about the way things are going to play out next year. We don't know how it's going to play out. And there's a real possibility. What a win against a Penn State or Oregon can mean for Iowa's resume. 10-2 is the sweet spot. And I don't think they're going to get there. I think we're destined for another year in that 8-4 type of range, 7-5. It feels like that's where they're trending, but that's an improvement where I thought they were going to be back in January, where I thought it was going to be a real struggle for this program just to get back to 6 wins. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, not the playoff Kool-Aid. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. For your second listen, make sure you check out the Portal Show. You want to be up to date and everything going on inside the portal, inside recruiting. Brian Smith has you covered. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape with the Portal. You can find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks again to all you everydayers out there, your team every day. That's what we do here on the Locked On Network. I got you covered on the Hawkeye side, your favorite NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA team, all right here under one umbrella on the Locked On Network. Thanks for being with us today. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Until then, go Hawks.